Okay, everybody, I'm going to check and see if I have some sound here and record a second part for data admin, BISS 11, pardon me, BISS 4403. And let me get this moved over here for just a second. I want to take a look at the syllabus so we can see where we are. And today, of course, is Tuesday, the 3rd. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to go back here. We'll go back up to the announcements. I'm pretty certain that we've covered, yeah, we did. We covered 14, chapter 14. Now, here's what we have ahead of us before you have some of these projects to do for the course. All right. We have chapter 15, which deals with unions. And I'll just go to the front of the book here. It's stupid to sit here and leaf through all of this. Chapter 15 that deals with union all. Chapter 16 that deals with cross tabs and self joins. I'm not sure if we're going to do much with that. And then 17, we'll do a little bit with 16. Then 17 is production database, combined tables for that. And then 18, where we will be doing conditional statements as well as parameter queries and subqueries. We won't do 19 or 20, okay? Basically, I would recommend that you would want to do that. And I'm in the contents over here in the Patrick text of the very first contents at a glance. The Oracle, of course, if that's, if you want to do the Oracle process project, you can do so. And so I'm gonna do chapter 15 today, which walks us through unions. I previously loaded a session dealing with outer joins. I think unions are a little bit easier to understand. Okay, and we talked about them some just the other day. So this is what we have ahead of us. All right. And how I've got things timed in the course so that by the 3rd of May, you will have done 18 lunches database cases. Okay. Now we're at 14 and we've done it up to 14 and I'm going to do 15 today. Okay. And that will mean that for Thursday, the 5th, you'll have screencasts for 14 and 15. Okay. And then on April the 12th, all right, we'll do 16 and 17 and 18. Now 16, like I said, will not be that big of a deal, simply because it covers some material. I'll tell you this. We're going to do a little bit of work with 16 because, frankly, I think crosstab queries self joins are cool. Cross joins that works, but the crosstab queries and access are a nightmare. And I think Excel has crosstabs, and that much better. So we'll skim through 16 and 17. Then we'll have 18. So we still have 15, 16, 17, and 18. So I'm going to do 15 today. Okay, which 15 for the 5th, and then we'll look at 16, 17, and 18 to close things out, okay? I may abbreviate some of these. It's quite possible that just to abbreviate things, I will probably do just some select queries, okay? Now, you can always go into the book and do all the work you want, but that'll be up to you. And the reason I'm going to kind of speed this up is that we're coming down to the point where you're going to have some assignments that will be due. And I want to talk about them very briefly. These are some projects. One of them is the Check Your Understandings. That'll be due on May 10th. Okay. And then if you choose to do the Oracle instead, you can do it. The SAS project from Teradata University, those 4 projects are due, set 1, 2, 3, and 4. okay? And that gets you through to May the 10th. Then on Thursday the 17th, you have final exam material that's due at the start of the exam period, okay? And then you have final exam questions, exams, pardon me, that are due at the end of the final exam period. Now, because we're a night class, our final exam is on 6 o'clock. Exam period is at 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, okay? But you'll notice I have some work that is due up to that point, okay? It's the final exam A and B, and those are, as you would guess, are hands-on kinds of things. And then C, D, and E, those are quizzes, all right? And if I'm not mistaken, you have 40 minutes for each one of them so that you can burn up the 2 hours. So we're going to look over at page 15 again. Now, as I said before, I'm going to start skimming some, okay, because I want to get you to the point where you've got the flex time you need to have. You said, what are you talking about? Let's go back over here for just a moment to the modules, okay? And let me say this also, on week, there will be, if we have to bleed over, if I have to bleed over into, I'm gonna do my best to get all of these chapters done for you, okay? And if at anything, I may just well say, here's a finished 16, a finished 17 and 18. Take a look at them, upload them, and we'll be good to go. Because you can see I have them right here, a 16 and a 16, 17, and 18, okay? And so if necessary, I may just, briefly open those up and take a look at them. I may even do that today. We're just going to see. But I have about 45 or 50 minutes left, so I get you to your 150 minutes of instruction. So we're going to take a look at union and union all. Okay. Now I want to just conceptually put this in your brain. You need to take a look over at page 557 in the textbook, because they show us the difference between a union and a join. Okay. In a union, okay, we're adding in the number of rows, okay, and so it's additive it's additive in nature. So the maximum number of rows equals the number of rows, i.e. records, in set A and B, or we'll say it in table A and B, okay. Then if we're going to do a join, that's a multiplicative or an associative type of exercise. And the maximum of rows that we'll get is the product of table A times table B. This is important, okay, so that we understand, first of all, the number, we can put into perspective the size of the output that we'll get. And also that we understand what we're doing when we're doing a union versus a join, okay? We're joining two tables, we're linking them up. When we're doing a union, okay, we're taking two tables and putting them together. And we saw the syntax for all of that when we looked when we did chapter 14, okay? Now, what we need to do right now is very quickly is go down and take a look at Lunch's database. We'll look at the code for 15, okay? And I may have one here that I can open up and have you download. Let me see what we got. And I can't remember if I had one done. But let's just go ahead and go back into the files. Here's our usual procedure. We'll click in the files. Okay, and like I said, this one's not going to be very long because we get to our 3 hours. Okay, so we're going to go down to the Patrick files. So I'm going to search a bit. And there they are, the Patrick materials. All right, and I'm going to download them. And by the way, I'm going to post this screencast over in the announcements section for April the uh, the 5th. Okay. Now let me open that back up there for a sec. Here we go. And let's diminish the browser down, or on my desktop. And I'm going to put in the access code. I already have it here. Okay. And I'm just going to simply do this. You can download the code again. If you're working on the same device like I am time after again, you can just simply rename the files. Okay, and as you do queries and you run and you generate some tables and so forth, you can just add it in and then just punch it up there. So I'm not gonna download those. I have the code already. And I'm gonna go ahead and use the SQL fun. Okay, with that one. And what I'm gonna do, in fact, is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make a copy of it. Okay, and then I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to rename it. And this is going to be SQL fun, and this will be Harvin Keith, and this is going to be LD, and this is going to be LD 15. Okay. And you should have a 14. I think I uploaded 14 the other day. I'll check the files in here in just a minute. Okay. So I'm going to open this up. And we're going to enable the content. Then, as usual, we're going to go back to the zip file Patrick had with all those materials. And we're going to get the the code. Open it, and we're going to get the code for chapter 15. Okay. Now, and they're going to give us the code for a union. Now, this is going to look should look very familiar, because the structure of these queries is pretty much the same as the structure of the queries that we put together to run those joins. Remember, we did the left outer join, the right outer join, and we did a full outer join. Well, now we're going to do a union. Okay. And so, as you can see here, and I've got this text file so you can see it very clearly. This is 15.1. We've got the select statement. Okay. And what we're going to get, and then what table we're getting it from. Okay. And then we have a union. And then we have another select statement, and then we close it off ordering that number 1. Okay. Now, as you're going to see here in the next bit of syntax, the author breaks out the anonymity juice, pardon me, the alias juice, and he starts using aliases for tables. And we'll see some aliases for fields. No big deal. All right. So as we can see there, I'm just going to run this query now. Again, I'm just going to kind of do a smattering of these. All right. And we'll look at this jewel. And of course, I'm going to click Create, Query Design. I'm going to get down to the query, SQL view, and we're going to run it. Oops, I needed a select statement there. The cut and paste wasn't too hot, was it? All right. Just for just a second. I need the whole thing. There we go. Then we'll throw this in. Now you notice I'm doing more and more talking and less running of queries, because as we've gone through this, I pretty much, my experience has been that you start to really see how the structure of these, and so the question becomes, okay, this is how it's put together. Here's the beginning table. What am I really doing from a very practical standpoint? So we're going to look at this. Okay, now I'm going to save this as 15.1. Okay, down the queries, and let's go down to the design view and take a look. Now it's just going to give us an SQL view. Well, let's go back to SQL because we can see it just as easily there. Okay, now the first thing is, I liked, when I look at something like this, I ask myself, okay, what tables am I getting the data from? And you know, it's obvious that when I come down here, before we hit the union statement, I'm going to collect it from somewhere. And here are these two tables, 1501 underscore first, 1501 underscore second. So those are the two tables that we're dealing with, and we're going to invoke the union in the middle of them. So it's real simple. We're just selecting some data. We're selecting some data from one table. We're selecting data from another table, and we're invoking the union. Okay, and let's notice what happened there. All right, if you look at the bottom of page 558, you're going to see that the union gives you 7 rows, and you can even see that up here in the results set. Okay, as we talked about before, early on, when we do a union, it's more additive, and it adds rows. Okay, and we're going to get every single rows. So it's the maximum number of rows is the sum of the number of rows in the tables. And join the maximum number is the product of them. Now, when you stop and think about it for a minute, you might want to say, okay, this might help me determine the strategy I use in a search strategy if I'm interested in really extracting data. Okay, and the more rows I have, and the more data I have, the more rows I have, the more records I have, it's more likely as I do my search or I run the query, I'm going to get closer in terms of extraction to what I want to get. It's just going to depend. All of this is situational, and look, you know, a lot of this if you work for some pretty large companies and they have some of the better products, you'll be doing this, but it will be highly intuitive, lots of icons, bells and whistles, and so it won't be as bare bones as this can appear to be. Okay, but if you look there at the bottom, page 558, you're going to see the first table had 5 rows, okay, and the second table had 7 rows, and we ended up, okay, with 7 rows, because when we do a union, we get rid of duplicate records. Okay, now if you go back to if you look at that result table at the bottom of page 558, you're going to see the first 2 rows are from the first table, okay, and then the second 2, and then the next 2 rows are from the first and the second table. Really those middle 3, and then the last 2 are from the second table. So we end up with 7 rows, 2 drawn from the first, 2 from the second table, and 3 records drawn from both tables. Okay, so you understand now why I might say, okay, maybe I should run a join to get more records. Okay, if that's what I'm after. If I'm trying to extract or distill down, if I don't want to see duplicates, unions will work. Okay, so it's more of a strategy in terms of how many records you're trying to get. All right, the more records you get, obviously, the more analysis you can do. Now, at the bottom of page 559, the author gives us the difference between a union and a union all. Okay, the union gets rid of duplicate records. Okay, a union all does not. And again, here's another one of these things. It's more strategic than just writing some code, okay, or throwing some code in. If I want all of the records, even if they're duplicates, all right, then I'm going to do that. Now, it might make a lot of sense for me to execute a union all for a very simple reason. Let's say that I have tables, and let's say I have two tables, okay, and one table basically gives me records of phone calls, international phone calls, all right, and then the second table has data about has records containing people and information about people. I think you probably know where I'm headed with this, okay? So if I'm like the NSA or the FBI or the CIA or someone who monitors traffic, all right, I'm probably going to harvest all of those records to get duplicates. Why? Because I want to find out if person A has been calling person B every day for the past 2 weeks. Then I've got something to go on. So the union all serves a purpose. Each of these do. It's just really more as a matter of strategizing. And the again, that's just the difference. Now, the top of page 559, they give you an inner join. Okay. And I'm not going to run you through that. There's just really no reason. But let's just talk about, well, let's go ahead and do the code. Why not? We're going to do an inner join. Okay. We're going to get everything from table A and B. Okay, because we got the alias for the tables. And then we identify each table. Then we use a where statement, an equivalent statement, and then we order them. So we've done the inner join, and and we'll just go ahead and copy this, okay? And then we'll just click create. We'll go in here. We'll do it. We'll click create. We're going to go into the query design view. Then we'll go down to the SQL view. Okay, pop this baby in. Let's run it and see what's going on. Okay. Now, here we have number, word, date, number, word, date. Okay. Now, we can see the result of the inner join. Okay. And the maximum product we could get out of this would be 35 matches. But we don't, because the inner join, we're matching on, we're doing the match, and you can see it there at the top, page 559, where the number field in table A matches the number field in table B, or number 2 and number 1. Those two numbers match up. So we only ended up with 3, but we could have potentially had a match. We could have potentially generated 35 rows. Okay. And again, this is one of these things where there are going to be those times where we're trying to generate, we're almost always trying to extract data down to get down to the precise types of data or set of data that we're after, the view, okay, when we generate the query. But again, it's an issue of strategy, all right? And again, each of these has their own place and their own use in terms of what we're after. And what you're going to find is when you're out at work, you're going to run into this, and some people will be using one approach, others will want to use another approach, and you almost have to sit down and ask yourself, okay, am I trying to get everything about these two sets of data, or am I trying to just get a list that's an unduplicated list of records, okay, or do I really have a way to match things up? Okay, and it just depends. It's just really depend upon what you're after and what you're trying to do. So the authors wanted to show us the difference of those two things. There's really those three: the inner join, the union, and the union all. Now, if we come over to 15, and we've done 15.2, they give us a union all, and I just call this 15.2. This is on the bottom of page 560. Okay, and we're going to do this, and we're going to call it 15.2 as well. Now, before we run it, here's what we're going to do. Remember, with union all, okay, we get the whole shebang. We get every single record that exists. We see the duplicates. Now, let's say, for example, I'm an auditor, all right, and I want to see if there's any monkey business that's gone on in an account. Let's say a disbursements account where I'm writing checks to people, okay? Okay, let's say you say my payables department. I'm writing checks to people. Payroll, okay? I want to use the union all because I should get duplicate check records as people are employed by me, okay? But if I start to see duplicates showing up, in the same time period, that's a giveaway, okay? That's a dead giveaway. Again, the union all captures everything. So when I want everything, I'm good to go. Now, again, we can just do the Control-C, and we're going to click Create, and we'll go over here to the Query Design. Okay, we'll go down to the SQL view. All right. So I'm not going to, we can run the queries all day long. The thing is, what am I trying to accomplish? And I'm going to save this as 15-2A for all intents and purposes, okay? Now, we saw the beginning tables at the bottom of page 560, and then we saw the results set, okay, at the top of 561. And you could see we've got 10 rows. We have 2 rows from the first, 2 rows from the second table, 2 rows from the first table, 2 rows from the second table, and then 6 rows from both. If you're seeing a pattern and you're saying, okay, when I'm seeing these situations like with the inner joint where I have, I end up, pardon me, on these unions, where I end up with more records that are a combination of each table. That tells me that I'm onto something, okay? But it may also just simply verify for me that I have unique records. Okay, I've chosen maybe a good primary key or set of keys to mimic a primary key. Now, over on page 562, they're going to walk us through another one of these situations. Okay, and this is 15.3. And here we're going to use a thing called a literal. You say, what are you talking about? Well, this is where we enter some kind of text or something like that, okay, into the query. And you can see the literals there, okay, is the word Patrick and John and 0 from the dual table. And so we have the author's name and a 0. That's what we call literal. You say a literal. Well, what I could do is instead of all the rest of this up here, this code is representative of stuff that's in the tables. As you recall, when we run a query, we save code. Okay, we don't change the table unless we go in and we have the authority to change the table, and we can. So we can do the select here. And we hard code this basically by putting in the John Patrick. This is the author's name. And we'll run it. Let's get all of it here. Okay. Again, we want to talk about what's going to be the most practical way to get this done. Okay. I'm going to Control C, and I'll come over here and I'll click Create. We'll go in SQL view. Let's click Create Query. All right, and we're going to put that as SQL. We're going to pop that in there, and we're going to run it. And there we are. Now, you'll see John Patrick, okay, and the 0, and that's a literal, okay? And the text talks about that. A literal is a way for me to put in some custom information, okay? And if you really want some, we've used literals before. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's probably over on pages 336 and 337. I think it's where you're going to find them. You want to take a look at that. It's somewhere in that neighborhood where they give us a little more explanation of literal. But we've literally just put in some code. Okay. As I said before, I'm going to hit the highlights. So we're going to call this 15.3. All right. Now, again, there you can see we use the union all because that's going to give us everything. Okay. If I don't want to leave any, if I don't want to eliminate duplicates, I do a union all. If I'm okay getting rid of duplicate records, I'm good to go. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes more is less. Sometimes, if you do a union all, as I just gave you that example, you see recurring things. You see recurring types of transactions. You see somebody the same name but different Social Security numbers getting paid. It's funny. Okay, we've talked about that. So, and again, this is something that you would want to do some thinking about. Okay, especially let's say you want to find out who are my repeat customers, and you have a record set of 100,000 people. You want to run a union all so you get everybody who's purchasing from you. Okay. All right. Well, we did that literal, and again, I think it's over in 336 and 337, the pages in the book. Go take a look and check, and it'll give you some more background on literals. Okay, so we've gotten that done. He's going to walk us down here now. Okay, and again, we're gonna you do another union. This is over in 15.4, and we're gonna do the order by clause. Okay, and frankly, I don't believe. We can just run the query, but look, here's the structure. We've got the select statement. Then we indicate the table. And of course, if we've used an alias for the name of the table, I identify the table. Then I invoke the union. Okay. And then I've just selected, we've got the asterisk because we're getting everything, okay, from this table. And then we order it. Okay. And all we're doing is we're using column name in the order clause. And that's just so we'll order it. Otherwise, it's going to order everything by default in ascending order, okay? But I want to order it by that particular variable, all right? And word one, typically when you order things, okay, ordering implies you're doing some kind of a comparison, or you have a list, okay? And if you're going to order everything, okay, there's something there about that order, that variable, that field, that column, whatever term you want to use for it, that is a pattern, okay. And if you said if you ran a union and you had a table on on dollars, sales, you'll want to order it. And we've talked about, when we were working in Excel, we talked about the difference of filtering and sorting. Okay. Now I think you kind of start to see it. Well, let's go ahead and just click this. Okay. And we'll take a look at it. And again, the author is going to walk us through about 53 of these, because he gets query crazy and wants to make sure we know and see it in every single possible variation. And I don't know that you really do need to do that, although you may get a chance to do it when you do some of these. So here we are. And we have them ordered by number 1. And notice here's an ordering that's in some ways somewhat a natural ordering, if you will. But we've done that. And again, over on page 565, he shows us another situation where we select, and we end up the context. Pardon me. We end up the syntax of the line of the query by ordering by text. Yes, no big deal there. He gives us now. If you look at the top of page 566, what you're going to see is that code is not in the text files, okay? But here, what's going on is, and you can see it when you get the book out and take a look, we're going to select, and we have a table alias A, all right? And then we identify it. Then we invoke the union, and then we come down to the second piece of this, and we select everything from a table we identify, and then we order it by the other table. Okay? And it gives us those result sets. It just gives us these different ones. Over on page, he gives us some Oracle SQL, he gives us some Access SQL, and then some Dual. And you could see those. It should be fairly the pattern of it, where I do a union with an order clause. Okay. So you should start to kind of see the pattern that's going on. Okay. Now, I think if you really want to understand, okay, a lot about what we're doing in here. Again, folks, you're probably not, you're going to probably run some queries based on your level in your company. Not knowing the work environment you'd be in, it's going to be hard for me to predict. But you'll have some type of dashboard. You'll have some type of DB capability. You'll have some type of computational capability. The best of both worlds, best of Access, best of Microsoft. Okay, and so you're going to be looking at. So I think one of the most important passages in this entire book is over on page 570 through 570, where they talk about automatic data type conversion. Okay, and what happens when we do a union. Okay, and he walks you through text columns, date columns, the compatibility of columns, and what happens, okay, in terms of length of data and how that gets resolved. You'll want to take a look at that. And the reason is this: the larger the firm you work for, okay, the greater the number of transactions, probably the greater the number of dimension tables, fact and production tables, all that business. And so you're going to know what happens. How does this all get handled? And when you start talking 25, 30, 50 million records, then you're starting to talk about some real money. So you'll want to at least be able to have an intelligent conversation with the folks over in IT when you get ready, when you talk about running a big data project. Now, I'm going to call this last one. I'm going to save it as 15.4. Okay. All right. Uh, Over on page 572, okay, he shows us um, we have a beginning table with long columns. Then we have another table with short columns, okay, and we run a union, okay, and we get that result table. Now, you know, you'll need to be careful when you do that query there in 15.6 because it's, be careful about putting in some narrative, okay? And what we're going to do is he walks us through page 572, walks us through two steps. The first thing we do is we execute that union and we name it a view. Okay, we've talked about why we call it a view. And then you're going to run a second query, and that gets you the result table. Okay, and you get everything from short columns down to long. Then he walks you through all this stuff like unconventional unions of tables with different data types. This is where you go to your IT people and you bow before them and say, please help me. And if you're smart enough to come in and say, I'm getting some strange looking stuff, they may, and it may be that if you're dealing with, if you have some legacy tables, or they don't know enough to create to have to recreate, refresh their tables every now and then, their data, and archive some of it, then you may be in a situation where you've got different data type issues and you got some problems and you have some wrangling to do, okay? And you can see the access SQL over there, okay? And over on page 574. And you create the view, and then you select everything from the view. I think that's a little extraneous. If you create the view, okay, then you can just click on it and see it. But the author's old school, and he wants to make sure that you do the union, okay, then use the select cause with an asterisk and invoke where you're going to get the data, just for purity's sake. But you can see the beginning tables with long columns, short columns, down to that union view and what you've got going on. 15, or on page 576, they've got an access SQL where you have to do a whole lot of work. And, you could do some work. And frankly, you can, what I would do is I would use some column aliases, okay, to help yourself out. And you'll want to note something there. If you want to add, if you just want to create an extra column, you can do so using a literal, okay, or you could go into the design view if you have that type of product and you have that authority, and just create it. But he walks you through that whole process to get the result table. Shows us some of the applications of unions. For example, to see if two tables are identical. I'm going to leave that to you to just play around with it, okay? Using literal and a union to identify the source of data. That's over on page 581. That's another use that you can do with them, okay? And so you've got there, what he's doing on page 5.1 is he's using a literal to identify the source of the data for that particular column. Counts, if you want to know the number of records. I think if you design your tables properly and you give everybody a unique ID, I say use a unique ID and then a counter. That's just me. So you know every record's unique, and then you know how many of them you've got. Okay. Again, this is stuff that you may understand. You may not ever really have to sit down and think through some of this. Hopefully you'll have a vendor or somebody there in the company who handles that for you. Okay. But at least you have a sense of it. That's why I told you, this chapter 15 was going to be pretty short, because once you kind of you can see the different uses, and they'll walk you through. Okay. They walk you through a couple of functions, two functions to apply to different parts of the data. And here they're doing an addition and then putting an increment in terms of a percentage. Not a big deal. And then they walk us into a union of 3 or more tables. Now, all that's going on here is we select from union, select from union. You get my drift. Okay. This is where we can harvest some significant, data with a union if we're involved, if we're in an extractive mode. And I have 5,000 tables. My folks can pull that. You can pull those. I don't know what in Access. I don't know really what is the default set on it. But here's the point: if you understand the difference between a union all, and a join, okay, then I move from the least extractive or discriminating kind of query to the most extractive, the most discriminating in terms of it's exactly what I want, as opposed to a list. The author walks through in terms of set and set intersections. Access doesn't support those. Those are Oracle. Again, one of those little tweaking things. Set differences. Again, these set difference. That's Access doesn't support the minus operations. So you'll want to steer clear of that. And that walks you, and that pretty much walks you through the chapter. Okay, and he walks you through the key points. You'll want to take a look at that. All right. And so, as I said, we'll move pretty quickly. So this is chapter 15, and this will finish off what you should look at on or before the 5th at 6 p.m. your class time, which I'm doing a pre-record for you for these, because I've got to do. I just can't be there with you. I don't want to get into it. But I have to do a little, I have to do some things, take care of some folks. And so, rather than try to run, I just literally couldn't get it done. And so I'm just going to give you guys the pre-recording. It's just as convenient for me as it is for you, because if you have a track meeting, you can't be in town or whatever, you can look at the recording and see what's going on. Okay. But this will take care of this week, and we'll have covered 14 and 15. And then on the 12th, we'll look at 16, 17, and 18. We may finish the whole thing, because I want to get you to the phase where I've got to give you some flex time to work on some of these big projects. See, what I've been building you up to is when I'm going to have you do those check your understanding assignments. Okay, I've got 10 of those, and some of them are pretty tough. So there's been a reason we've been doing this, and doing it with the repetition we have. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and I'm going to save this. I'm going to stop the share, save it, and upload it in YouTube, and then post it over the announcements. And this will be part 2 of your screencasts for Thursday, April 5th.